Welcome to the Inclusive Growth Show with Toby Milden. Future-proofing your business by creating a diverse workplace.
Hey there, thank you ever so much for tuning into this episode of the Inclusive Growth Podcast. I'm Toby Milden, and I'm joined by one of our special guests who's been on the podcast a couple of times now, Raj, who is one of the co-founders of InChorus. And Raj came on a previous episode with his partner in crime, Rosie, but Rosie is on a flight somewhere at the moment. So we're going to be sitting down with Raj today, and we're going to revisit where InChorus is up to in terms of their product and how they're helping their clients. But a big topic for today is around the introduction of the new Worker Protection Act here in the UK and how software like InChorus is helping companies with this introduction of the new legislation. So, Raj, it's lovely to see you again. Thanks for joining me.
Real pleasure to be back. I've been tuning into the episodes which have gone from strength to strength. So I'm a pleasure to be invited again.
So just in case the person listening to us right now hasn't heard one of the previous episodes, could you just give us a reminder about what InChorus is and why you founded the software?
Sure. We call ourselves a speak up platform. I think that is not kind of obvious to everybody what that means. And so just kind of at its essence, it's a platform that's built around what we felt was a kind of big need within more and more organizations was for anonymous reporting. And it came about from kind of our journey working with lots of large organizations and HRDs going back 7-8 years now, when it felt like the topic of workplace culture was becoming more and more important to them. However, they didn't really have a clear understanding of what their workplace culture was. We felt that there was a bit too much of a gap between the sentiment they were getting from an annual survey, perhaps, and then nothing until you kind of got to a grievance. And we really felt like that was far too big a gap to leave from both perspectives. We felt that employees needed outlets to share their lived experience. And we felt that organizations needed to capture some of that feedback and look at the themes and trends that are coming through from a behavioral perspective, but also looking at where in their organization and from a protected characteristic perspective, who in their organization is dealing with what. And so, yeah, InChorus is a speak up platform centered around anonymous reporting that helps employers and employees.
Yeah, and I've had the ability to play around with your software, and I think your software is the sweet spot between doing annual engagement surveys where you get the feedback from employees once a year, and then it might take weeks to analyze that results, to having real-time data. So being able to understand what issues employees are facing now, but also being able to link that to any characteristics they might have. So being able to understand, are people on the receiving end of bad behavior like microaggressions or discrimination because of a particular protected characteristic like a gender, ethnicity, disability, and things like that. So it's very useful data.
Thank you.
And I know you've had a busy year. I know that you've taken on lots of new clients. The software is always evolving and developing. And I spotted you in the news recently regarding some work that you did with a law firm. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. We often have lots of our clients like to kind of remain under the radar. They're doing great work. When they're putting something like InChorus in place, it's because they are doing something to understand their workforce better and try and change their workforce. This example with a law firm was they'd actually PR'd the launch. It was a really interesting reaction. Kind of, we were in the election cycle, so it was. I think we were discussed by Vanessa Feltz on This Morning on the same day that Rishi Sunak and Starmer were on the show, and it just became a bit of an interesting topic, looking at what constitutes bias, what are the benefits and risks, I guess, of introducing anonymous reporting. Kind of from our perspective, it was wonderful. We were in the Daily Mail, Telegraph, Times. We heard ourselves on discussed on Talk Radio, and a couple of other TV channels. So it was interesting. The whole kind of that episode culminated in a wonderful piece in the Financial Times that Rosie spoke to Emma Jacobs there, which was a kind of really interesting balanced view on pros and cons of employee listening, if you like. And it really gave us a better opportunity to discuss those risks and how our platform kind of mitigates some of those, whilst also maximizing the benefits you get from listening to your employees better.
What are some of the risks that or concerns that companies have if they use a Speak Up platform?
I think the kind of the go-to in a lot of organizations' minds when you talk about anonymous reporting is that it means that anybody can say anything about anything that they want, naming names. And kind of the original premise for Inchorus, it's obviously evolved a bit, but the original premise was, how can somebody flag a behavior, not report a person, in 60 seconds without any freeform? So you're not dropping names in. You don't have reams of text that you're folding in. We've designed this in a way where you are using an awful lot of drop downs. Part of the challenge of how you codify 1,001 subjective experiences into the platform. And that's something that we kind of pride ourselves on. So yeah, that the fear that immediately kicks in when you say anonymous reporting is not the reality. Interestingly, a lot of the reporting in the press totally didn't get that, went off on rants about these dangers without understanding what the actual product does. So it was good to kind of have some balanced interviews, and actually the industry press did a good job of looking at the pros and cons. And I think that's the main one. Is like that I think a lot of people are very fearful when you say anonymous reporting, and it's not quite as accurate. It's not quite that.
Yeah, it is funny because I do surveys with my clients to capture diversity demographics, but then how included people feel in the organization. And it surfaces a lot of new insights that my clients wouldn't have thought about. And then naturally I go on and talk to them and say, actually, wouldn't you like these insights in a kind of ongoing, more real-time fashion? And that's where I drop your name in, by the way. And it's really interesting how I actually come across quite a lot of resistance where clients will say, yeah, but the thing is, if we're going to open up the floodgates, and if we open up the floodgates, surely we're going to start receiving all of this feedback, and we're going to actually have to do something about it as well, aren't we? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point of the exercise, is that you want this feedback from employees so that you understand what problems are going on, and then you can put in the solutions. But I think, based on what you're saying, that the floodgates don't often just open. It's not like you have this sudden downpour of complaints from employees.
No, and I don't think they're complaints either. It's kind of flagging behaviors that you've experienced or witnessed. I think, this idea that the floodgates open is quite far from the truth. We all work in environments that are incredibly busy. So the idea that the launch of Inchorus is suddenly going to be front and center of everyone's mind, and that's where they're going to be spending all day, is far from the truth. It's a journey that companies go on once they put in place something like Inchorus and a Speak Up platform. You're constantly communicating the benefits of sharing your experience. You're communicating where your policies are and what your processes are. It's part of that ongoing journey of culture transformation, and nothing as scary as opening the floodgates actually happens. And I guess this idea that the floodgates open and suddenly you have to do all this work is also, I guess, part of the benefit of working in this way is, you're already doing that work, but you're doing that work when something bad happens. And what we're trying to do is don't do the work then, do the work before. It's much nicer for you and for everyone involved if you're taking small, iterative, preventative steps based on insights and clues. We often say Inchorus is more like a smoke alarm. So you're kind of dealing with issues before it becomes bigger, rather than just running around putting out fires afterwards. It's just, I guess it depends where you want to do the work.
Yeah, I love that analogy. And why do you think that Speak Up platforms like Inchorus are particularly valuable to organizations right now?
A few reasons. And I think something that we've been saying for years, but it's just only becoming more and more amplified, is the need to listen to your workforce, and for your workforce to feel listened to is more important than ever. I think that the idea that culture just happens is also kind of missing the point. I think you'd be quite intentional about your culture. not in the sense that you create a set of values and then expect that to become your culture. I think you need to work at it. And there's a big gap between what leaders and the rest of the workforce feel the reality of the culture is. And if you don't have the mechanisms in place to understand what your culture is, to understand the impact of the initiatives, to understand the impact of whatever it is going on in your organization, whether it's a merger or an acquisition, or whether it's some redundancies, or whether it's the stock price climbing incredibly high. These all have implications, and you can't second guess what your culture is unless you're asking people. And I think that the approach has gone from guesswork and hiding from the reality to one of understanding what's going on and responding to it in cycles. We're not asking people to have knee-jerk reactions to everything they hear. What we're encouraging is to look at themes and trends over time. And once something is a theme or a trend, you can consider how you respond to it. And sometimes just acknowledging that you've heard them is enough. It's not always a case that you're rolling out a new training initiative every week.
I mentioned at the top of the show the introduction of the new Worker Protection Act here in the UK. What are some of the reactions that you're seeing from clients that you work with or companies that you're talking to at the moment?
Yeah, so that came into force 3 weeks ago now. We've seen a lot of activity, particularly in some sectors more than others. We have seen organizations refreshing policies, putting in place anti-harassment policy, and using this as an opportunity to kind of reset how they look at that work stream, if you like. We've seen data coming through that only 5% of organizations are prepared for it. So there's an awful lot of organizations out there that are either in the midst of doing that work or haven't even got to it yet. So I think there's a lot more to come from organizations in terms of preparing and understanding what the Act is asking of them. I think, coming back to that point I raised earlier, it's legislation that ought to be beneficial. But if you're able to start taking more of a preventative approach, it means that you're dealing with fewer bad incidents. They're always going to happen, but fewer of them. We see that across the board with our clients that have been working with us for any period of time. We're also seeing this, I guess, a slightly more thought out approach to this work. Interestingly, a lot of this work is being done from HR teams, and it's probably work that a lot of your audience, your ED&I lead, has been thinking about for years, but this legislation that's really working in your favor. And I think it's a big opportunity for ED&I to work with their HR colleagues to get through some of the things that they've been thinking about in terms of protected characteristics and prevention. So yeah, it's an interesting time. We've seen some activity. There's going to be an awful lot more. And we really think it's a good opportunity for workplace cultures, for workers and ED&I teams.
Yeah, I like how you're saying it's a good opportunity for ED&I professionals or HR people who've been thinking about this for a long time. I think that the introduction of the new Act is only going to help cement what companies should be doing and should have been doing for a very long time. And what do you think are some of the other opportunities that the new Worker Protection Act is going to offer businesses?
I think this opportunity, as I say, to reset and kind of to take stock and really think about this as a genuine work stream. And I think that is an opportunity. It might sound like extra work, but actually I genuinely believe that in the medium to long term, it will have two benefits. One is less work, and secondly, better culture. So that is a massive opportunity. When you look at the steps that the EHRC are recommending organizations take to better comply with this new legislation, it's quite common sense, and it's just giving HR teams a reason to take the time and space to put measures in place that are methodical, that are based on data, assessing the data and critically listening to what their staff have to say. I see these all as positives, when you're looking at ensuring that staff have outlets to speak up, when you're looking at policies that are clear and people know where they are, when you're looking at the data to see what your training needs are, when you are making sure that your staff are protected from third-party harassment, and when you are working towards, and what we're seeing from the more progressive organizations is almost thinking about harassment like a funnel, where you have clues coming from your surveys, maybe your focus groups, maybe your Speak Up platform, your grievance reporting, like all of these dots are connected. It's an opportunity to a proper monitoring and evaluation framework that, yes, it prevents harassment, but you're preventing harassment by improving your culture and understanding your culture better. So for me, it screams of opportunity. I'm sure that a lot of HR and ED&I professionals out there won't fully agree with me yet, but I think in the medium to long term, it's definitely a positive step, and we're really pleased that it's come into place. We're really proud to have been trumpeting this work for years. So yeah, no, it's a really big opportunity and a real positive kind of UK PLC and the third sector, where we have lots of clients, and obviously government itself.
So I asked you and Rosie this question the last time you came on the podcast, and I'm just wondering if your thinking has evolved since then. But what does inclusive growth mean for you?
For me, and it's interesting, I'd love to listen back to what I said previously, but for me, when I look at that, it strikes at the core of what Inchorus is about. If I look at inclusion, it's about creating better culture. And if I think of growth, for me, my mind goes to kind of performance and tangible business results. And if you bring those together, it's like better culture means greater performance and better growth. So it kind of strikes at the core of what Inchorus is about. And so, yeah, it's a strap line that means an awful lot to us.
So if the person listening to us right now wants to learn more about Inchorus, they might be thinking that a Speak Up platform could be a good solution to any work that they're doing around the Worker Protection Act right now, or they're really thinking about how they monitor the culture of their organization. What should they do?
So we've recently revamped our website. So there's lots of information about our kind of core products and services and the benefits, and also specific pages about the Worker Protection Act, which you can find at inchorus.org. We've also created some great content around the Worker Protection Act. So perhaps we can share it with you as well, Toby. There's a PDF that looks at the kind of, people break it down in a bunch of different ways, but 6, 7 or 8 steps to make sure that you're thinking about the Worker Protection Act in the right way. That's definitely something that would be a valuable resource for those that haven't got yet. So that 95% that haven't yet put something in place. And we've worked with some fantastic partners that help organizations do the bits of the work that we don't provide. And so, big nod to you, Milden, as well, that provides some of the kind of critical training that is part and parcel of complying. So, it can all be found at inchorus.org. You can get in touch with us directly from the website. And we also share lots of good information on our LinkedIn page. Again, you'll find that by just searching for Inchorus on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Well, Raj, thanks ever so much for joining me again today. It's been lovely to catch up with you. It's really exciting to see how the software is evolving, and also how this is it's great timing. It's a great solution that can help with companies that are trying to get their head around the Worker Protection Act. So thanks for joining me.
Pleasure, Toby. Really good to be here.
And thank you for tuning into this episode of the Inclusive Growth Podcast with Raj and myself. Hopefully you've taken away some interesting thoughts in terms of how a Speak Up platform like Inchorus can help you get your hands on real-time data in terms of how your employees, what they're experiencing right now, and how that's shaping your culture, and how a Speak Up platform could help you prepare for responding to the new Worker Protection Acts coming into effect. So thanks ever so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode, which will be coming up very soon. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Inclusive Growth Show. For further information and resources from Toby and his team, head on over to our website at milden.co.uk.